It was a day like any other, or so it seemed. But then, there he was, lying on the grass with his eyes wide open, staring at nothing, confused, lost, and alone. His suit was pristine, but his expression? It said something was wrong. Have you ever felt the weight of an entire story hanging in the air, just waiting for someone to unlock it? This was one of those moments, and I couldn't ignore it. Stick around, because what you're about to hear will make you rethink the true meaning of fate. Like and subscribe if you're ready to dive deep into a world of unexpected turns, where the difference between life and death is sometimes just one choice away. Ethan and Luke were just two kids who had everything figured out, at least for the day. Their bikes rumbled over the cracked sidewalk, the sound mingling with the hum of the afternoon, as the sun beat down lazily on the quiet neighborhood. It was that golden time, late enough in the afternoon that the air began to carry a hint of coolness, but the sun still held its grip on the world. They'd just finished a game of street hockey, and now they were looking for something to do before dinner. What started as a casual ride down Maple Street would turn into something neither of them could have anticipated. As they turned the corner toward the old park, they saw something strange, a man. Not just any man, but someone who didn't belong here. He was sprawled out on the grass, half on his back, his face turned toward the ground. His expensive-looking black suit was wrinkled and stained with dirt, as though he had been there for hours, but the disorientation on his face said something wasn't right. His shoes, glossy and new, caught the light in an almost surreal way, reflecting the fading rays of the sun. His hands, one of which was gripping a briefcase that had slipped to the side, trembled faintly, as though he had no control over them. "Should we stop?" Luke asked, his voice low and cautious, a slight tremor of unease creeping in. Luke wasn't one to get involved in something that could be trouble, but the sight of a grown man lying there like that was unsettling. Ethan, the braver of the two, didn't hesitate. He slowed his bike, the squeal of the tires on the asphalt cutting through the silence, and stopped next to the man. "Hello? Are you okay?" Ethan called out, his voice full of concern but also a touch of confusion. The man didn't respond, didn't even move, except for the subtle rise and fall of his chest. Luke shifted on his bike, clearly uncomfortable. "Maybe we should just call the cops," he suggested, eyeing the man's disheveled state with suspicion. But Ethan was already dismounting, the wheels of his bike turning slightly before it came to a stop. "Hold on, Luke," Ethan said, his voice steady, but there was a kind of quiet determination in it. "I don't think he's hurt. He's just out of it." He crouched beside the man, keeping his distance but studying his face. The man's eyes were open, unfocused, his gaze darting from side to side without seeing anything. His mouth was slightly ajar, as if he was trying to speak, but the words were trapped somewhere deep inside. Luke watched nervously, unsure if they should be doing this. "What if he's dangerous?" he muttered, his grip tightening on his bike. "He doesn't look dangerous," Ethan replied, though his own pulse quickened. He reached out cautiously and placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man blinked slowly, as if struggling to process the world around him. His eyes met Ethan's for a split second, and there was a flash of recognition, something in those eyes that made Ethan's heart race. But then it was gone, replaced by complete confusion. The man's lips parted, and his voice came out in a hoarse whisper, barely audible. Who are you?" he mumbled, his words slurring together. "Ethan," the boy replied quickly. "What happened? Are you okay?" The stranger didn't answer. His head tilted back, and his gaze turned upward, scanning the sky as if the answers to his questions were written there. His breathing became shallow, his chest heaving with each intake of air, as if it took all his energy just to stay conscious. Ethan exchanged a glance with Luke, who was still hovering on his bike, uncertainty written all over his face. "I think he needs help," Ethan said softly. "We should call an ambulance." Before Luke could respond, the man spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't," he coughed, then managed to say, "don't call anyone. Please." Ethan was taken aback by the pleading tone in his voice. "We're not going to leave you here like this," Ethan said firmly, but something in the man's eyes made him hesitate for just a moment. I need to get away," the man muttered. "Please, don't tell anyone I'm here." Ethan glanced at Luke, who was clearly struggling with the situation. He wanted to help, but he didn't know what to do. It wasn't like anything they'd ever encountered before, and the man's odd behavior made him feel uneasy. But Ethan couldn't ignore the desperate look in the stranger's eyes. "We can help you," he said, his voice steady but filled with an unexpected compassion. "You're safe here. You don't have to be scared." The man blinked again, his lips trembling. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then, suddenly, his body went limp and his eyes closed. "Hey, hey," Ethan shouted, grabbing the man's arm and shaking him gently. "Come on, stay with us." But the man didn't respond. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he glanced up at Luke, panic beginning to rise. "We need to get him to a hospital now," Ethan said urgently, but Luke was already fumbling with his phone, his hands shaking as he dialed 911. As the call connected, Ethan's mind raced. Who was this man? Why was he so desperate to stay hidden? And why did he look so out of place in the middle of the park, dressed in a suit that seemed too nice for this neighborhood? The questions lingered in his mind, unanswered for the moment. But as the sirens began to wail in the distance, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a threshold into something much bigger than they could understand. And as the stranger's fate hung in the balance, Ethan couldn't help but wonder, what if this was just the beginning of a story they weren't ready for? The ambulance arrived in what felt like no time, its lights flashing and sirens blaring, cutting through the stillness of the park. Ethan and Luke watched, anxiously hovering nearby as paramedics carefully loaded the man onto a stretcher, his body still slack and unresponsive. He didn't look as out of place now as he had before, just another patient. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something about this was far from ordinary. Luke was silent, still gripping his bike tightly, eyes wide and filled with uncertainty. The paramedics exchanged quick words, then began heading toward their truck, and the man, now secured in the back, was whisked away. Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach, but he couldn't explain why. Something about the whole situation didn't sit right with him. It wasn't just the strange man on the grass. It was the way his eyes had locked onto Ethan's for that brief second, as if he knew something, or as if he had a secret. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. "I don't get it," Luke muttered as they watched the ambulance drive off into the distance. "Who was that guy? Why was he out there like that?" Ethan shook his head, his gaze fixed on the street where the ambulance had disappeared. "I don't know, but something's off." The two boys pedaled in silence back to Ethan's house, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows behind them. Their conversation was minimal, each lost in thought, mulling over the mystery of the stranger they had tried to help. Ethan kept replaying the brief interaction in his mind, but the more he thought about it, the more questions he had. Who was he? Why had he been so desperate not to call for help? And most pressing of all, why had he asked them not to tell anyone? Later that evening, as the sun sank lower and the sky darkened into twilight, Ethan's mother called them inside for dinner. They ate, but even as they spoke about mundane things, the image of the man on the grass lingered in Ethan's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that they had been a part of something much bigger than they realized. Then, just as they were finishing their meal, the doorbell rang. Ethan opened the door to find a sleek, black car parked in the driveway, its tinted windows reflecting the last traces of daylight. A well-dressed man, his expression serious, stood on the porch, holding a briefcase. "Is this the residence of Ethan Thompson?" he asked, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. Ethan nodded warily. "Yeah, that's me. Who are you?" The man's gaze flicked to Luke, then back to Ethan. "My name is Mr. Winters. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Michael West. He's the man you encountered earlier today." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Mr. West? Is he okay?" "He's recovering," Winters interrupted, his tone still as unreadable as his face. "Mr. West has been through quite an ordeal. He wishes to thank you both for your assistance earlier, though he would like to keep his involvement with you confidential." "Confidential?" Luke echoed, his brow furrowed. "Why? That's something Mr. West would like to discuss with you, if you're willing to meet with him." Ethan and Luke exchanged a glance. Something in the man's voice sent a chill down Ethan's spine. It was too strange, too convenient. They had helped a random stranger, and now a mysterious man in a suit was asking them to meet the person they had tried to save. "I think we should go," Ethan said quietly, his voice steady, though his pulse raced in his chest. Luke hesitated but nodded. They followed Mr. Winters out to the car, the low hum of the engine filling the space between them. The door closed behind them, and as the car pulled away, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what he was walking into. Something told him that this was no ordinary thank you, that there was more to Michael West and to this story than met the eye. And somehow, deep down, Ethan had the feeling that whatever came next would change their lives in ways they couldn't yet understand. The drive felt long despite being only a few blocks. The sleek black car slid through the streets, its headlights cutting through the dark, and Ethan couldn't help but wonder how they had gone from a normal afternoon to this strange, surreal moment. They arrived at a tall, glass building downtown, a stark contrast to the quiet streets of their neighborhood. Mr. Winters led them inside, past security, and up to a large office. There, sitting behind a polished desk, was the man they had helped earlier, Michael West. But the disoriented, confused man was gone. Instead, Michael looked like a man in control. His suit now fit perfectly, his posture straight. He didn't look like a victim anymore. "Ethan, Luke," he greeted them calmly, his voice deep and steady. "Thank you for helping me today. But I owe you more than just a simple thanks." Ethan blinked, still processing. "You're Michael West, the CEO?" Michael nodded, his eyes intense. "Yes, CEO of West Global Enterprises. I wasn't just some random person you helped today. My situation wasn't an accident." Luke's jaw dropped. "You're telling me you're a billionaire?" Michael's eyes softened. "I wasn't supposed to be in that park. I was drugged, left there to disappear. People who want me out of the picture, they thought I was gone. But you saw me. You helped me. And now you're part of this." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. "What do you mean part of this?" Michael leaned forward. "I need help. Not just from anyone. From people who see more than just money, who aren't afraid of a fight. I'm rebuilding everything. My company, my life, and I need the right people by my side." Ethan and Luke exchanged a glance. This wasn't just a thank you. It was an invitation into something bigger than they could have imagined. "So what are you asking us to do?" Luke asked, still in shock. "I'm asking you to help me fight back. This is just the beginning, and I need people I can trust." The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Ethan wasn't sure what to think, but one thing was clear. Everything had changed.